All right, we are back. And I love that we actually started like right on the dot. I was watching the clock. There was a moment of silence, which hardly happens when Todd and I are in the same room. Well, we're not in the same room, but you know what I mean? Like even the same virtual room. It's got real quiet for a minute there. And I felt myself like, oh, it's about to be game time. I'm so excited. So I, of course, want to, first of all, welcome everyone who is joining us. And we are currently streaming on LinkedIn Live, Facebook Live. Todd's going to share. I'm going to share again here in just a minute and make sure I can reach as many people as I can with this message, because we're going to talk about something that is personally and professionally so incredibly important. And that is your mind and how to get your mind right. I love that. If you are here with us live, please let us know by typing a note into the chat. And I'm getting a note here. I'm going to just ignore it for a second. It looks like we are streaming to Facebook, having an issue with LinkedIn. So in just a moment here, I'm going to be able to get that fixed, but I'm not going to worry about it quite yet. So you Facebook people are getting this like early special edition. So Todd, I'm so excited to talk to you. We only have 30 minutes for this show, so I want to like get right to it. And I want to start by saying, first of all, I feel like I should be wearing a hoodie, but I'm not. And now as I'm saying that, I realize I should have brought my mug, because I've got a Todd Durkin Get Your Mind Right morning mug that I use in my morning prime time, which for me has been absolutely critical for getting through last year and transforming my life, and reading Todd's book and hearing his voice in my head has been such a big piece of that. So why don't we start, Todd, just share a little bit about your background, what you do. I'm going to get us streaming here on LinkedIn, and then we'll start to chat a little bit.
Yeah, well, thank you, Heidi. Thanks for having me today. And the gray hoodie is mandatory in San Diego today. Folks, it's raining in San Diego, and it's cold. It's like 50 degrees. Like, meanwhile, there's people like it's 20 degrees, but it's rainy. It's a beautiful, balmy day here in San Diego. And Heidi, you were alluding to it as far as get your mind right. That's what gets me up in the morning, because I just want to let you all know, when I wake up, my mind is not right every morning. It is a series of regimented routines that allow me to start to feel my mind right. So I think that's something I know you want to talk about today, but some people are like, hey, do you wake up and you get all fired up first thing in the morning, you get vertical, you start running around? And no, honestly, no. What I've learned over the years, in order to get your mind right, there's some disciplines that you have to really tap into in order for you to feel your absolute best. And all of us, and maybe even today, as you're listening live or later on via recording, is like, you got to get your mind right. And now my athletes are like, hey, TD, like, tell me to get your mind right. And that's why get your mind right is it's something I say to myself every day. Like, get your mind right. Get your mind right. Get your mind right. So that's what I do now. I between my podcasts and my books, and between Fitness Quest 10 and all that I do, it's constantly trying to be that voice in people's head and heart that inspires them to remember who they are.
And you do it so beautifully. I met Todd originally through a good friend, David Isaacson and Judy. Dave and Judy, we love them, out in Orlando. And they gave my book to Todd and then recommended I speak at one of his events. And so and I knew nothing about Todd. And those introductions, I'm sure you've had them before, where they're like, you have to meet this person. I'm like, yeah, sure I do. Well, they were right. And so I started watching. There was like a little documentary about you on YouTube. And I was it's so funny. I can remember like it was yesterday. I was in Vegas at a speaking engagement, running on the treadmill, watching this documentary about Todd. I'm running faster and faster. I was like, wow, this is so inspiring. I can't believe I get to meet this person, let alone speak at his mastermind. And then there was a whole room full of people like Todd. I mean, they were like-minded. They were like sold. I mean, it just was so powerful. And so I just want to give a shout out to all of those. I don't know what you call them, TD trainee tribe.
I call them fire-breathing dragons and mind-right maniacs. It's the people primarily, there's quite a few in the fitness world that I have the opportunity to coach. And that specific event, I remember, Heidi, because you came in and you mesmerized the room. There were a couple hundred people in that room, and people were dialed in like I've never seen them dialed in on your message, which was mindset and, everything that you always preach about. And people were fired up. And I think the biggest thing, I always like to have a lot of soul in the room, like really allow people to share genuinely and authentically in that. And that was a few years ago now that we've known each other, but you brought it that day. And ever since then, I know we have a lot of Heidi Hanna fans in our mastermind group and what we're doing. So thank you from day one until now. You're someone that I always look at on the inner circle, and I can always pick up the phone and call, and you get it. You always get it. You know, some people get it, and you're one of those people that on all levels, not just entrepreneurially and business wise, but the energetic balance that has to happen. Whether you're an entrepreneur or you work at a job that you're trying to figure out, where you fit in, you always get it, and empathetically, you connect with people so well. So thank you for what you do.
Well, so everyone, this is the Todd Durkin Heidi Hanna fan club, by the way, and you are now members. And by the way, we are fans of yours too. So I'm going to be popping up some of these comments that you guys are sharing. I've seen some familiar names and faces here, so I love being able to see what you guys are thinking and any questions that you might have. I just have to tell a quick story that Todd was at our wedding, and we still tell this story, John and I, about how much you loved our catering at the wedding. Do you remember who catered our wedding?
Chipotle? Was it Chipotle? Yes.
It was Chipotle. And it was like, John to this day goes, well, Todd said it was the best wedding ever, other than his, of course. And we loved the Chipotle. We had Chipotle on the beach in Coronado. I mean, it was...
What was awesome is everyone was just themselves. Like, I think sometimes at weddings, it has to be so sophisticated. You spend so much money on food and everything else. And everyone was just having a great time eating great Mexican food. Yes, Chipotle. I love Chipotle. And I was like, this is so perfect. It was a great time. I remember that day like yesterday.
Yeah, it was a great time. Well, let me tell you another day I remember really well, and I didn't prepare you for this, but I think it's an important share for your audience and for mine. We did a podcast last year. And it was so powerful. We hadn't planned to get into it, but I started sharing a bit more about my personal journey and that I had struggled with suicide and suicide ideation since I was a kid. And it was just so cool to be able to talk to you like that. And of course, I always feel like that when it's just you and I, but that's kind of the way I do everything. It's too exhausting and it's way too stressful to try to pretend to be anything other than what we are. So I'm like, here it is, right? I'm an open book. Well, the fascinating thing about that to me, number one, was the way you reacted to it. And you were so touched by that. And your community was so kind. I got so many emails of encouragement after that. But what's really crazy, and I know this is how God works, is I had no idea, because I was feeling really good at the time. I had no idea I was getting ready to go into the worst 9 months of depression I've ever had. And I've never felt that dark. And there's some people that really stepped up for me, clients, friends, family. A lot of them are probably watching this right now. And the reason I'm bringing it up is because this continues to be something that's such a problem and a challenge for people. And my number one goal and why I really do everything I do is to try to make suicide no longer an option for anybody. And getting your mind right and these daily habits that you talk about in your books and in your masterminds and all of that stuff is so fundamental to doing that. This isn't flipping a light switch and suddenly you have rose-colored glasses on. In fact, I always explain it like the glasses are stuck and some days they're blue and some days they're pink. And if you have stress sensitivity or some of these genetic predispositions to mental health challenges, it's really hard work. Every day is a battle for your own brain. So your work has meant so much to me. Your tribe has meant so much to me. And I would love to have you share with us what some of those techniques are. And I realize now I'm getting like super deep and personal on mental health challenges. I know a lot of people here have those struggles too. We can use the same techniques that you and I also teach to business professionals, that you also teach to your athletes. And the last little thing I have to say, and I don't care if Mark Mathis says I'm name dropping, I don't care. You work with Drew Brees. And when I saw him walk off the field this last time, I was in tears because I saw your spirit in him and vice versa. There's just something about those peak performers when they're all in.
Yeah.
You just feel it. So I realize that's a big kind of setup. But with that, what are the types of things that you think are most important?
Well, A couple things, Heidi, and before I get there, I want to acknowledge that conversation we had in that podcast, because folks, if you ever listen to my podcast, I typically go into it with some ideas of where I want to go with the discussion. And truth be told, in our conversation, as they always go, Heidi, that one just kind of took a little bit of a left turn, and you said that, and I wasn't even familiar with the word suicidal ideations, and you started talking about it, and I was like so intrigued by this, and you sharing so personal. I've done over 150 podcast episodes now. That clip, that segment of that show, I think I've gotten more feedback from people universally about that and how they relate to that. And it was like a floodgate of people saying, oh my God, I've got the same types of thoughts. Sometimes I'm like, really? Wow. Like it was an eye opener. The fact that you even had the courage to go there and share that. And it shows when you're vulnerable and you open up, people are like, wow, like I can relate to that. I just acknowledge it because out of all of the episodes that I've done, I can't tell you the number of people who've said thank you for our podcast episode that we've done, and specifically that share by you, Heidi, of going so deep and so personal. When I say it saved some lives, I really do believe that it has saved some lives from suicide and going deeper in faith, because you talked about faith and how important faith is, and all of those things. So again, thank you for sharing that. Folks, go back and listen to that. It certainly is a deep discussion. But to your point with I'll call it mindset and mental health, obviously over the last 9-10 months, this has been something that is so important. And I think there's some fundamental things that people must do in order to at least set themselves up for success. Now, some of these are going to be really basic. You're like, I know, Todd, I know I've got to work out. I know I've got to eat right. But the problem is most people don't do enough of it, or at the frequency that they need to do, or the intensity they need to do to get the right chemical response, with endorphins and dopamine and oxytocin and serotonin, all these things that are important to get the mind right. So I look at it, and the first thing for me is obviously the quiet time. When I get into the word, for me as a man of faith, if I can get 10 minutes of quiet time, call it meditation, call it prayer. But for me, when I'm getting my quiet time and tapping into the whispers, praying to God, please help me. How can I best serve today? What can I do? And listening to those whispers, it's like, what can I do? This morning, Monday, you texted me this morning about, Monday morning blues. It's cold. It's rainy. We had like at Fitness Quest 10 this morning, it was like a tornado coming through and ripping the tents out and everything else. And I'm like, I had to get my mind right this morning. And that typically says, how can I serve someone? So getting to that servanthood mentality versus, all about me, but that faith aspect, and then movement. I mean, movement, and we all know getting out in nature. I actually love the rain. When I say, you put the hoodie on, you go out when it's raining or it's cold or it's snowing, where some of you all are at, get out in the elements. I love NF's song called The Elements. Get out in the elements and feel it. It's good if it's cold, if it's rainy, if it's snowing, good. Go out there and feel that. It means you're alive when you can actually feel the elements versus it's got to be this perfect, sunny 70-degree weather to go out there and move your body. Because when you get out in nature, nature is healing to the soul. And typically it's 20 minutes of getting out minimally. If you go out there for a longer time, do it. But getting out and feeling those elements is really important as well.
Yep, absolutely. So I'm seeing here, I definitely have to pop this up right here. Our good buddy, David Isaacson.
David, nice, David. I love it. I love it.
Times like these are so important. And I'm kind of curious, I mean, if you can give us a little behind the scenes access. One of the things that I was thinking as you were talking is I'd love to talk about specifically how we help young people going through these times. But like, just for fun, did Drew Brees ever have hard times? Did you guys ever? I mean, I realize they're not like this, like maybe this deep, but like.
Hey, listen, every pro athlete does. I had a group this morning. Every pro athlete does, and Drew does as well. And this is documented. I'm not sharing anything that's not in his book. But guys, I mean, before his Super Bowl season 2009, his mother committed suicide. So this is public knowledge. This is public knowledge I'm sharing. So this was right prior to training camp on that. It's one of the reasons why Drew was convicted and behind a lot of mental health different organizations. But, yeah, adversity, having the shoulder ripped out of a sock in 2005, in the 2005 season, then his mother in 2009's death. And a lot of times athletes at that level, they're all dealing with things off the court, off the field as well. And many times it's those things that, you don't know. See, when someone looks healthy or you see them on TV, they look like they got it all together. But many times you don't know the battle that's going on between the ears. And that's where I like to go. The battle between the ears is, the mindset and the heart set and the soul set. So what's the spirit like? Is the spirit broken? Are there habits that are going on that will ultimately break a man or a woman down? Like if you're doing the wrong things, and money can break you. We know the forces of evil. Money can break you. Sometimes you're in habits that you shouldn't be doing, whether what you're watching on TV or in the feed on your phone. These are habits that I, as a coach, love to get in. Like, hey, how you doing on the phone? What are you looking at? What are you watching? What are we watching at night? Like, these are the things that ultimately you're as strong as your weakest link. And I don't mean just like physically, you're going to get hurt, but there are some things that can weaken your relationship, weaken your marriage. But for specifically, you asked for a guy like Drew, although he is extremely strong in the mindset, every single human being, you, me, and anyone else watching this right now, live or later on, is like, you got to get your mind right. And that is a daily effort. Right now is harder than ever to get your mind right. You got to battle like hell to get your mind right. One of my clients and athletes is Mike Chandler, just fought in UFC 257 this week in Abu Dhabi, and he had a huge win. I mean, this guy we talk about a mind right maniac. Like, you're going into a cage, an octagon to fight. Like, you got to get your mind right quickly, otherwise you can die on that. And you're like, well, these are pro athletes. They're no different than folks who are trying to literally get up and like go out for a 20-30 minute workout, or like David who's doing his Peloton workout. Like, you gotta show up. You got to show up. And the message today with my athletes today, baseball and football guys today, is like, listen, don't train to be ordinary. Right. Don't train to be ordinary. Train to be extraordinary today. I believe that all of us have little superpowers in us. What's your superpower? You've got to train that. And I mean superpower, I'm not talking this like weird. Like, I'm talking like, there's gifts inside of you. You got to train to like not be ordinary, not to be average. Like, go out there and start to use the self-talk to yourself of like, dang it, I got to get after it. And I gotta get better today. And like the self-talk is something that most people don't have good, positive self-talk to themselves. And many times it starts really negative, and you got to flip that switch real quick and get your mind right and get after it every day. Every day it's got to happen.
Yeah. And, so this is why I swear, Todd, at some point we're going to have a show together. I mean, look, he's standing up, I'm sitting down. He's talking about going out, these pro athletes. And I'm thinking, just for anyone else who may feel like me sometimes, well, first of all, the storms are so loud. I've been up since 3:00 in the morning, couldn't go back to sleep because it's been so loud. It's a trip. It's beautiful when it's not so loud, but when it's loud, it's actually pretty freaking scary. So I'm watching all this play out, and I'm thinking, last year when I was depressed, my training was to get my shoes on and go outside. That was big. And then I walked around the block. Now, before I got sick in February, I was training for a half marathon. I was in the best shape of my life at that time. And then when I got sick and then got depressed, I could walk around the block once and then twice and then 3 times. Now I'm happy to say I'm in the best shape I've ever been in my life. Like, I didn't think I could get in the shape I was in February. I'm doing better now. And I'm doing better now because I went through what I went through. But I think it's an important reminder to people that our training is personal, depending on our circumstances, depending on our bodies, depending on so many things. So I think that getting your mind right sometimes feels almost hyper. And I love that about you. I love the hoodie. I love the mug. I have days where I'm like, it's a Todd Durkin kind of day. And I have other days where it's like, no, it's a recovery day. And in fact, you and I talk about that a lot, the importance of recovery. Could you touch on that a little bit, and why, like, yes, we need to train and we need to have this intensity, but we also need to rest and repair.
Yeah. And I'm intrigued by that, Heidi. Like, when it comes to when someone is so down and out, cognitively, I should exercise. I'd feel better, but screw it. I'm not doing it. I don't feel like it. Right. So it's that I'm always like, how can I figure that person out? How can I get in that person's head of like, we all know we need to exercise and push ourselves because we know that sweating, there's this chemical response that happens that makes it, but it's like, you know what? No, not today. So I'm always after that because we all know it, but how do we get in that? So we're using our emotion to get moving.
I know someone to give you some ideas. So let's podcast that again, because I'm thinking of about 10 to 20 different tips for people who may be trying to help other people get out of that state. And I'll just give everyone a quick one right now. Sometimes when that was happening, I watched Netflix and I'd watch inspirational movies, and that's what I needed at the moment. And then that inspiration gave me just enough fuel to get off the couch. Sometimes I was talking to my mom and crying for an hour, and then promising her I would do the elliptical for 5 minutes. And every time I would do something like that, I always went a little longer than I thought I would, and felt a lot better actually after. So I think there's kind of almost hacks to some extent of ways to give yourself, you just need a little bit of juice to get going. And then once you start, but sometimes there's literally no juice.
Yeah. And that's where some of the recovery aspect comes in. Because one of the things I was going to say is, number one, touch therapy, massage therapy, especially right now, like everything's like, you can't touch. I got a massage the other day, and let me tell you what, I needed that thing so bad. 90 minutes of a therapeutic massage, body work, the body's beat. I'm recovering from a surgery, the fascia and soft tissue is hardened from stress. It's like I need more massage than ever. I think every human being does. I think massage makes us a better person. And whether you're training hard and need to recover, or you're just the mental, emotional side, that touch therapy. Dr. Tiffany Field down in Miami talks about this all the time, that like infants that are coddled, physiologically and psychologically, are more stable and grow faster. Touch therapy is huge when it comes to recovery. Sleep, you talked about this earlier, sleep right now. This was a huge change for me in the last 9-10 months, because I am always focusing on my morning routine. But what happened during the pandemic was my mind was running so fast that I wasn't sleeping well, because I was trying to pivot so quickly that I wasn't sleeping. So my morning routine was disrupted. My workouts were disrupted, and I wasn't feeling good. So I'm really trying to put much more emphasis on my sleep habits, because without sleep, I don't care who you are, you're no good. And whether that means, some of you maniacs out there only getting 4 or 5 hours, or 7+ hours, wherever you're at. The bottom line is we need to sleep, and we need quality sleep that's going to allow our bodies to recover, so that we can soulfully, spiritually, energetically, emotionally feel better. So really honing in on that last 1 hour before you go to sleep is crucial.
Let's address this one together. So this is my good friend, Ted Vicky. We are Penn State in the house. And I totally agree with this. I see this with so many of my clients too. As a former athlete, if my workout doesn't include being in the corner throwing up, it's not a workout. COVID has made that worse. And I think a lot of people do that. So many of the financial advisors I work with are former athletes. And I always make it part of my speaking engagements to say, that's not you anymore. I understand that you feel like you need to do that, but you have to, it's all about the story we tell ourselves, right? Like this needs to be you right now. What's the best you right now that you're capable of? Because otherwise we set these bars that are so high, and I'd say to them, when you were in college, how much were you practicing versus playing, right? Like we know, I remember at the Human Performance Institute, we used to talk about this all the time. Athletes train 85% of the time to compete 15% of the time, or probably even more skewed than that, right? We're performing all the time. How often do we actually get to train? So things like intensity, how you work out, the intensity of your workout. And then I would say on the flip side, can you make your recharge more intense? Like I do integrative calming relaxation techniques. Like I talked last week with my friend Charmaine, and she has these relaxation. Oh my gosh, I got to get you to Eighth Harmony, Todd. They're these relaxation boxes you get in. Kind of looks like a tandem bed sort of, but it's got heat and light and sound vibration. And then I take in my Alpha Stim. So I've got that going on my electro brain balancing stuff. And then I take my essential oils in. Like I'm fully immersed in getting into that healing state as fast as I can. So I don't need to do as much time, because it sounds weird to consider recharging to an intensity, but I think the more you can layer that kind of stuff, the faster the healing happens.
Yeah. Hey, Ted, Vicky, thanks for the question. And what I would say to Ted is get your mind right. You don't need to train to puke. Matter of fact, what I would say is this: if you're puking in workouts, that ain't a good workout. I would say stimulate, don't annihilate. Stimulate, don't annihilate. Stimulate the body physiologically, mentally. Stimulate it. All of us right now need to be training and exercising to feel better, not to kill ourselves. So yeah, motion is lotion, movement is medicine, no doubt about it. We want to be using exercise, but not pushing yourself to the point where you're going to puke. What I do is I have a heart rate monitor. I wear a MyZone, and 100 MEPs to me is like my foundation. If I get 100 MEPs, that's a MyZone effort points. To me, that's a good workout. If I get 150 or more, I know that's going to be like I'm starting to get into some biochemistry, a little different. It's going to start altering me. If I get 200 plus MEPs, I'll be at the puking phase most likely. I don't want to get to that point where I'm in like red zone constantly and crushing. I like to monitor my intensity. To me, it's about frequency now, and 2 to 3 times a week getting good intensity, but not where I'm 80+% of my maximum heart rate for 15 plus minutes and that. So almost like stimulate, don't annihilate, stimulate, don't annihilate, and then recover, so that you can say when you're doing your recovery, whatever intensity that you're doing the recovery, no doubt that you feel better. That's a mindset shift. So I say get your mind right. For all of you, especially you former athletes, it's like, yeah, we've got to shift our own mindset to make sure that we feel better. The purpose of exercise and working out is so that we are better, we feel better, we perform better, not that we feel like we got to be in the sprawled out recovery phase where you're on your back with your arms sprawled out, feeling like, you're going to puke.
Yeah. And you know what? Here's the other thing. Research shows that, exercise is good for you, but even like literally a rat on a treadmill doesn't get the benefits if they're forced to get on the treadmill. So as soon as you get those endorphins going, but you also have cortisol at the same time, which is one of the stress hormones, you don't get the same benefits of exercise. So I always tell people, don't force yourself on now. Sometimes you got to push yourself to get going. There has to be something else about it. If you can make it playful, if you can make it a little bit more intense, if you can have workout partners, if you can have a great coach like Todd, all that stuff's going to help. And I know that Ted also probably loved your answer, because Ted does a lot of research on wearables and fitness innovation and technology. And you mentioned one particular thing, but do you have other things like that help people, whether it's monitoring their workouts or their intensity or their heart rate variability or even like their recovery, anything like that you like right now?
One of the things we use, and this is going to be pretty specific, but like at Fitness Quest 10, we use an in-body scanner to look at someone's percentage of body fat. I'm not so much as worried about people's weight necessarily, so that when we're training, we're trying to monitor one's body fat. Again, that's a little bit more of an investment by most training studios if they choose to do that. But I like that a lot. I love the heart rate monitors. And there's so many good ones out there right now. I've used MyZone for 3 years, and my athletes use it. And when they're traveling, I got someone over in Hawaii right now and can, monitor their zones. And then the recovery side, I'm even using like the Juve wall, red light therapy, and getting more into that because of all the blue light that all of us are being exposed to. So I've got a Juve red light therapy wall that I'm using from the recovery side that it's pretty interesting, and that stuff. But get back to the basic. Let's say like, man, that's some pretty technological stuff. It often comes down to the exercise. Are you doing it? And the simple strap around your chest is fantastic. And then like post-workout, are you stretching? Are you doing yoga? Are you doing breath work where you doing 2 minutes of actual breath work and you're literally trying to be aware of your breath? Like that costs no money. There's no investment. There's no technology, because sometimes we get so carried away with the technology. Even I feel bad if I forget my heart rate monitor. I'm like, oh, the workout doesn't count. Gosh, I'm like, Todd, stop. Release yourself that you have to have that on every time. But sometimes we get so carried away with technology that it deters us from the actual purpose of the workout. Of like, I want to get out and feel the environment and go. But it's a careful combination of both.
Yeah. And I'm cracking up too, because not only with workouts does it not count, but I get to the point sometimes my meditation doesn't count if I'm not tracking it on my heart rate variability device. So, I mean, come on. Meditation is like the opposite of being hooked up to something. It's so crazy. So as we get ready to wrap, such an amazing conversation. Obviously, I could do this all day with you. What are you most excited about? Oh, well, I know one thing we talked about was your book, Get Your Mind Right, but your audiobook is coming out tomorrow, which means people can actually hear your voice speaking these words, which is going to be amazing.
Yeah, thanks, Heidi. It was supposed to come out obviously last June when the book came out, and because all of the recording studios are closed or were closed, this fall I had to go up to LA, went to a great recording studio, and it is my voice. I'm just one of those guys, like it's got to be my voice. And I'll tell you what, I don't know, Heidi, if you've done this before. It's hard to read your own book without a stutter. It's got to be perfect. You got to feel the emotion, and it took 25 plus hours to record, 3+ days.
I've done three of them. And every time I say I'm never doing that again, but I cannot possibly have someone else's voice, because when I listen to an author, I want to hear them.
Amen. You got to feel the emotion of it. So I'm excited. I've heard that, snippets of it, and I'm really excited the way it came out. So I'm excited for that tomorrow. Get Your Mind Right. I mean, you think the book right here, it's like now's a perfect time to get your mind right. Like, what are you going to do to get your mind right? Physically, mentally, spiritually, what do you need to do to get your mind right? Audio. A lot of people are consuming audio now, whether it be a podcast or a live like this, or an audio book itself, so that you can have that in your ears when you're traveling, when you're working out, and you can hear someone's voice. I think that vibration that gets in your head and in your soul, actually, you talk about like getting out of a funk sometimes just hearing a message, a 10-minute sermon or a 30-minute message or listening to a book on tape can really help with that. So I'm excited for that. That's coming up tomorrow.
That's awesome. When we finish, I'm going to go back onto Facebook and LinkedIn, and I'm going to post the link to that documentary video about you. It's short. It's fairly short, but it's so cool. It's so cool to hear your story. It's absolutely fascinating. And I just want to give people a moment before we close to share any key takeaways that you had from the discussion today. If you type those in the chat box, I'll be able to share a couple of those. And I know for me as a speaker, anytime I do things like this and I can interact with people and hear what landed for them, it's the greatest gift you can give us, because it also helps us figure out what to talk about next. So Sheila says, this is a great one. I've just found my next Audible book. Yes.
Thanks, Sheila.
And I will also say, in addition to Todd's great book, if you have not yet listened to Alicia Keys' book, and you got to get the Audible edition because she sings on it, it's amazing. Like, I have to keep listening to it. It's so good. Kevin, who is in Vancouver, BC, is talking about Sirius XM and Cadence. And that's interesting because I don't know if that's specifically to this question about key takeaways. That's so funny. So he's got another follow-up, just to work on evening cool down and letting go. Absolutely. Jennifer, who I actually met through my LinkedIn course, which was such a special treat for me, says exercise is crucial to our overall health. And she said she is committed to getting some exercise today. So even better. All right. So with that, I want to thank you guys for being here. I love this conversation. I will share as much as I can in the links, as I mentioned, and then also tell you 2 other incredible interviews this week. On Wednesday, I'm talking to my dear friend, Warren Rustand, who is the Dean of the Global Leadership Academy with Entrepreneurs Organization. We've worked together for years. He's going to unleash some wisdom about the leader within us. His new book is coming out actually this week. And then on Friday is going to be my first ever semi-political discussion. And I'm still shocked that I'm doing this, but I am so tired of people not listening to each other that I asked my friend Greg Orman, who wrote a best-selling book called Declaration of Independence, as in being independent. And it's all going to be about how we listen more deeply to each other and have those important conversations when our emotion gets stirred up in times like these. So I can't wait. I'm proud of myself for being brave enough to even talk anything political, but I'm kind of at that point now where I feel like the message still is spiritual, and that's how do we listen to each other? How do we help each other? How do we love each other better? And so I'm going to give that a try on Friday. You're awesome. I love you, Todd Durkin. Keep up the great work. Good luck with your book release. I'm going to show one more last one here from Dawn. Takeaway that even high performers and other coaches who have days of struggle. Absolutely. It's hard as a trainer to inspire others when you're having a rough time. I listen to Todd and others to help pull me out of that funk.
Amen.
I am with you, girl.
Amen.
All right. Keep doing what you do. And we'll be back again soon. Thank you, Todd. Thanks everyone for being here. And if you did like it, please share so we get this message out to more people. And we will see you again next time. Bye for now.
Thanks, Heidi.